Alright, welcome to episode 12 of Talking to Myself, where I talk to myself about topics that excite me. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about detachment. And detachment is quite important because in this materialistic world, we often find ourselves attached to certain things, and this ultimately causes suffering. So let's start off by talking about what is detachment. Let's give a definition, at least my view of what detachment is. So my view of detachment, and this is not a dictionary definition, this is just from my own experience and my own knowledge and research. The way I see it, it is a way you can still enjoy the things in the present moment, enjoy them as much as possible, but being totally fine if you were to lose that thing or if you no longer had that thing. So I know that's not, like I said, a textbook definition, but like I said, I'll just go over that again. It's being able to enjoy things in the present moment as much as possible, but being totally fine if you were to lose those things. When I say those things, I mean stuff like money, relationships, clothes, even things like a car, your technological devices. And the way I see it, and once again, this is only from my personal experience, my view. Obviously, it's going to differ to people, but this is the way I see it, and I think it's quite a balanced approach as well. I don't think that we should be one extreme or the other. I think we should be somewhere in between, because I know some people, in order to do detachment, they completely avoid having things. So, particularly in some religions or some cultures, they might quite restrain themselves from having, say, alcohol, sex, some materialistic things as well. There's some, I'm not sure if there's some I think it's monks. So they might live in the very basic lifestyle. They might not have a home. They might just live in a tiny room, completely empty, stuff like that. And then there's the complete opposite, where some people always have to be buying new clothes, the new iPhone when it comes out every time, which is unnecessary. You don't need 30 pairs of shoes. You don't need the new iPhone when it comes out every year. You don't need the new car when it comes out every year. Stuff like that. It's just unnecessary. So the way I see it is we need a balance. The best way is, in my opinion, to still be able to enjoy the thing, as I said. So still be having something like your new clothes, for example, but you have just the amount of clothes that's necessary. So you might have a couple of, suits for work, which is just necessary. It's all you need. You might have a few pairs of trainers, a pair for running in, a couple of pairs just for going out in, and maybe a spare pair, something like that. So you have just the amount that is necessary, and you still enjoy using those things. So let's use the example of relationships. This is quite a good one as well. You may still enjoy having a boyfriend or girlfriend. You spend every time you hang out with them, you enjoy it fully. You make sure you're present with them. Obviously, you communicate well, and you do everything you can in that moment to get the full experience. But with that said, if for whatever reason you need to go your separate ways and separate, maybe you're no longer getting on, or there's work commitments or other commitments, you have to travel somewhere, you have to move away, whatever it may be, this doesn't dictate your the mindset that you have. This doesn't dictate your emotions. This doesn't sort of cause you to lead to a downfall. You're not reliant on that thing, that relationship in this case. So if you were to lose that relationship, you'd be fine without it, because your state of mind is in a position where you can cope with or without it. So either way, you're not addicted to it, because you don't rely on to use it every day, every week, and that means you can function without it too. So it was quite a long explanation of what I think definition is, and go into more in depth about it. But unfortunately, that's not the reality for most people. So what are some ways that people can work on becoming a bit more detached? And once again, this detachment is not saying you don't enjoy things. You do enjoy them, but you are fine if you no longer have them. So this is why I believe some sort of like religious practice, spiritual practices are quite beneficial if done effectively. Something like fasting for a month during Ramadan, for example, and I've actually tried that myself, and I would say it's very beneficial because it gets you out of that addiction of the food, because we're so used to, a lot of people have breakfast, lunch, dinner at set times, particularly when you're in a working schedule. And more than being hungry, we're just eating or drinking for the sake of it because we're used to eating at those times. So something like fasting, you're only eating when necessary to basically just to survive, basically just to get through and survive, rather than eating for pleasure. So you're getting rid of the attachment of food, of eating. Maybe you have like a dessert every day, maybe you eat 3 times a day, which you don't really need to do, and instead you're being totally fine with that minimal requirement. Now the fasting, let's say the Ramadan, needs to be done, when I say properly, because a lot of people overeat during the times when they're not doing the fasting. So this defeats the whole objective, because you've still got the desire there to eat. Not you're not getting rid of that, burning that attachment, so to speak, to it. So the point of it is basically, one, to cleanse your body in the case of fasting. Two, to relieve yourself from constant, at least wanting, like constant desire. So the goal is to get rid of the desire, so you are fine when you eat, but you no longer need anything more than it when you're not eating during those times when you're meant to be fasting. So fasting is just one example, but the goal is to basically burn through your desire of whatever the thing is, so then you're no longer reliant on it. So fasting doesn't just have to be food. I think the fasting is good because it can be done from anything. It's just a time of abstinence, restricting yourself from a certain thing. I hope I said that word right, but so it can look like something like you restrained from sex for a month. But that also means calming the thoughts in your mind related to it as well. So if you've restrained from physical action of sex, but you're constantly thinking about sex, you've not got through the desire, so therefore you're still attached to the thing. And if you're still attached to it, ultimately it controls you. My suggestion, based off this, just to summarise, because I feel like I'm waffling a little bit here, it would be to find a way to burn through that desire so you're no longer attached. Because only the attachment to something is what's causing the suffering, as said by Ram Dass. So however you do it, it would be good to look at some sort of religious practice or spiritual practices, even stuff like meditation that reduces you from the attachment to certain thoughts that will keep reoccurring, whether it's, fasting from food, fasting from sex. Find a way to restrain yourself from something so that you ultimately are no longer reliant on it. I hope that makes sense. It does to me. And take part in something to challenge your mind and do some fasting. Have a lovely day.